One of the uh, one of the things that people use the most, I use, and the folks that I work with when it comes to building products, is a set of personas. And you may have heard them as user personas or lean personas or just the term persona. And yet you may still be in a place of saying, okay, what is it, and how do I use it? How do I work with it? Um, if you've heard me talk about building products before, you've probably heard me talk about building opinionated software, and that's probably the best place to start. You think, how on earth can software be opinionated? Right? Well, the truth is that people are opinionated. But if we embed those opinions into our software, then we make our software opinionated. I'm going to explain what that means in a second, but let's first try and tackle why would you build opinionated software, right? Well, let me ask you this. Have you ever been in a situation where you think this product is the perfect product for you? You think this is this will solve the problem, and you spend money to get it, only to discover once you've unwrapped it, once you've installed it, once you've used it, whatever kind of product it is, that is totally not for you, right? Um, and uh, and imagine, right? Imagine that you took um, a mop home, right? You were excited to use the mop, and you get the mop home, and you get ready to use it, and you finally unwrap the whole thing. Not that mops get wrapped, but imagine that yours did, and you unwrap it, and you finally get into it, and you have this little bit of instructions, and it says, by the way, you can't use this on hardwood floors. This particular mop doesn't work on hardwood floors, and you're like, I wish you would have told me that it didn't work. Like, this was the fanciest mop. It had the coolest little sponges at the bottom, and I wish you would have mentioned that it didn't work for me, because I wouldn't have bought it. And in fact, now, not only have I bought it, which you may be happy about, you took some of my money, you earned some revenue, but now I'm going to go around telling people forever that your product is worthless because it doesn't work on a lot of hardwood floors. And so now you have someone who's advocating at the top of their lungs against your product because you didn't let them know that it didn't work for them. Well, that's what it means to have opinionated software. Your software has a particular bent, a particular way it sees the world. And in the case of this special mop, it suggests that all floors should not be hardwood floors. And so, because it doesn't mind laminate floors, it doesn't mind Pergo floors, but there's no way that it wants to deal with actual real wood. So it's opinionated against it. But you want that on the front of the mop, because then you know, and this is where it gets to the value point of it all. You know, when you look at it, whether you're part of the target customer or not. You know whether to buy it or whether to move away. And that's critical, right? Because more often than not, ambiguous software that says it'll do everything for everyone ends up being a pretty big disappointment. And you end up with customers who paid for your product and then turn around and don't want it. Turn around and talk bad about it. And you don't want that. You want every single customer to love your product. And how do you do that? Well, you build your product in such a way that it has an opinion on the world. And because it has an opinion on the world, it has an opinion about who should use it and when they should use it and why they should use it. And more importantly, they have opinions about who shouldn't use it, when they shouldn't use it, and why they shouldn't use it. And those are clear and very apparent as part of the product. When you do that, something happens. People, as they approach your product and they get to your product, they discover whether they're part of the target audience or not, and they move away, and you have no cost. It's not just that you don't have a cost of sale, but you don't have the cost of support when it was a poor purchase. You just don't have that cost at all. You also have raving fans, right? Because the very thing that you want is the customers that are closest to your opinion, your syncing perspectives. My product says, I have this opinion, and the person who walks up to us says, I have the same opinion, and then they buy it. That's the core of what it means to build opinionated software. You should make it clear who is your audience just as often as you make clear who isn't your audience. Sometimes you do that with price. Right? You drive up to the Ritz-Carlton and you go to, you go to step into it, and it tells you right away, hey, I don't care what you drive. I don't care how you're dressed. I do care about your money. I do care that you care about service. I believe that regardless of what you drive and regardless of what you wear, that you value top-notch service, and top-notch service comes at a top price. And you believe it and I believe it, and if we both believe it, you're willing to pay me $500 a night for my room. And you're willing to enjoy all the benefits that $500 a night gets you. So that when I open my car door and I walk out to the Ritz and they say, "Hello, Mr. Lemma," like, they use my name because of course they use my name, right? And they walk me in and they direct me to the right place, and I walk into my room and there's a gift because of course there's a gift, because I'm paying $500 a night for a room. I like it, they like it because they figured me out. Guess what happens if I'm not that target customer when I show up to the site? I go to reserve it and it says, $500, are you kidding me? I'm looking for a place for $69.99. And they're like, that's fine. We're not your place. This is not your place. But also, when you get to the $69 room, you won't be complaining about the fact that they never called you Mr. Lemma, because you're only paying $69. So that's the whole point of having opinionated software. And one of the ways that we work at building opinionated software is we build it for opinionated people. We build it embedding a certain perspective, a certain understanding of what we value and what our customers value. We build that based on the idea that there's a target market, a core segment of people who want to use our product and who will believe in our product and the way we do it. If you're thinking about, let's say, your iThemes, so you're saying, I don't believe that you should be held ransom by a software developer later when you want to make a change. That's a fundamental belief. I don't believe that you should ever have to be beholden to someone with technical chops just so you can run your business. I believe that every single entrepreneur should be able to run their business without an engineer on staff. If you believe that, then your products will believe that. And if your products believe it, then they won't work in certain ways, and they will work in other ways. And so to that end, we work with personas. We build personas. Because even if you say, okay, this is the kind of entrepreneur you have, well, then you still need to define, well, there are segments or micro segments in my broad available market, my target market, right? My target market is a person who wants to build a website. You're like, great, but that's really broad. Now let's bring it down. Well, these are the opinions of my product. These are the opinions of the way we think about things. Okay, you've narrowed it down a bit. Now I want to create micro segments inside there. I want to understand who are the different kinds of users, right? In the case of if you were building websites, you go, well, are you building a website for yourself or are you building a website for someone else? Right there you have two different people. Right away, you're like, I have two different personas. The person who wants to learn one set of tools so he can build or she can build 200 sites a month, 200 sites a year. 200 sites a month is probably crazy, but 200 sites a year, even 20 sites a year. Or the entrepreneur who wants to build it once. And frankly, they don't want to know much about building because once it's up, they just want to keep maintaining it. And maintaining it is very different. They don't need to learn everything. They don't even need to know the acronyms because once it's up, they don't care. You don't want to educate this person with all sorts of fancy technology stuff because they don't ever intend to think about it or talk about it again. This person you might want to educate, right? So these are two different personas that can still have the same opinion and still come to my software and say, yeah, I think we're a good fit. So, but you can tell that those two people are different. And so what happens is we build a persona so that when developers are building products and when marketers are talking about products, we can shape the product and the message for these different personas. I should highlight that when we go after personas, we really want a limited number per product, right? You don't want to have 15 personas for a product. You want to have 3. 2 if it's easy, right? 2 if you can get away with it, but 3, maybe 4. But don't go beyond that, right? In general, I end up doing about 3 per product. So what goes into a persona, right? We've spent all this time talking about why you use a persona, but what goes into it? Well, one of the things that distinguishes these two people is what are their objectives? What are their goals? The goal of this person is to have a site up and running and run a business. to have a presence online. The goal of this person is to learn a tool set so they can be efficient and quick to produce many websites online. These are two different goals. So asking yourself, well, what do they want to accomplish and why do they want to accomplish it? This is important when you write out these personas. That's the goal, right? The next part that comes with that is, well, how do they go about achieving their goal? What's the workflow? What's the approach? Because in the first case, right, the person who has their own site, they may not even build the site. They may let someone else build a site. They still want to use a particular framework or a particular theme or what have you so that they can go back and edit it easily, right? Whereas in this case, the workflow is, no, I produce, I create custom, I do whatever, right? So workflow, how do they differ in workflow? What about demographics, right? Age, gender, ethnicity, employment status, yearly revenue, if that's important. Demographics may also be the demographics related to the kinds of, depending on how you think about this, but the kinds of devices they have. Do they carry an iPhone with them everywhere they go? Do they have an iPad? Are they, are they technically engaged or not at all, right? So you can break up and think about demographics in a lot of different ways. Then you want to think about environment, right? You think about that person who has that one site. They're in the shop the whole day, and they're not even at a computer, right? They're at a point of sale system. They don't go to their computer except for maybe an hour at night, maybe 2-3 nights a week. They check email. They're not very good with their email. And here you have a guy who sits at a computer all day long. The environment is different. How do you think about that environment? Skill set, right? Capabilities. What skills do they have? And that may be important technically, like what can they do? What do they know? How have they done this? But it may also be in their specific domain. In this case, what they're skilled at is sales. They're skilled at talking. They're skilled at negotiating, right? And this person is very computer literate. He's skilled at programming. These are very different skills, and you want to understand how they're going to think about it. And this gets to the heart of how you see some products interact differently with different parts of the market, right? A product that is particularly focused on end users, right, will likely not have a lot of tools and not have a lot of APIs for developers because they're focused on end users, right? So it shifts how they think about the product. It becomes opinionated about the need for APIs. Whereas if you're targeting this person, you might want to expose a lot of APIs because at the end of the day, you're serving this customer and this customer may need it. But understanding that comes down to understanding their capabilities. And then, you might get into attitude. And sometimes even attitude, I will describe the attitude in the form of a quote, right? What would they say? If I was talking to them and you're trying to pool groups of people into this one persona, but what is the thing you hear them say a lot, right? So in the case of this guy, in the case of the person who runs a business, they say, even if I want to make a little change, I have to pay, $1,000 just to make a small text change. And that becomes a quote I think of, right? He's the angry guy. He's the get off my lawn guy because he's constantly upset that he's beholden and held hostage by a technology he doesn't understand and because he has to call someone else to fix it. This guy's never going to say that, right? This guy's just going to say, I love the flexibility of this solution, right? And so I think about flexibility. He wants options. It changes how I think about things. Right? So this is the core. You might also, in terms of when you're talking about capabilities or skills, you might say different expertise levels of technology, right? How good are they with mobile? How good are they with social? How good are they with general software? You might say, what kinds of software do they use, right? What kinds of products, digital products and technology products do they use? So you might in your persona, you might define these are all the devices and these are the kinds that they would have or they would own. This is how many apps. You could create little charts. Part of designing that persona is designing how people can look at it and get that data quickly. So you create kind of these dashboards of different kinds of personas. But the whole point of this, right, and I didn't mention this up front, but I name these personas, right, with actual names. so that you can use them in your vocabulary. You can use them as you talk, so that you're interacting with your own team and you're saying, well, what would Susie do? What would Bill do? How would Bill think about this? And so I add a little personality to it. You might attach a Myers-Briggs personality to it, so that you can predict this is. And so when you finally go to designing a product, you can say, I'm building a product for Susie and Bill and Frank. That's what I'm doing. And these are their three personas, and these are the three ways they see the world. And broadly, they have the same perspective, but now they have different needs, and I need to be able to deliver on those needs. That's ultimately what a persona is, how you design it, how you assemble it, and why you'd want to do it. And it all comes back to building opinionated software. Hope that helps.